Hello and welcome back to Meaningful Monday with Johnny Tiger on December 27th, 2021. Again, I hope everyone had a great Christmas holiday, Boxing Day, and for those in Western Canada that's affected by this cold snap, I hope you guys are staying warm, staying safe, trying to stay inside. This is not a good time to go out. Today in British Columbia, there are parts with a wind chill going down to minus 20 degrees Celsius. Minus 20 Celsius, that's like really, really cold. So, uh, I have lived in British Columbia for 26 years. I have never experienced this in Richmond, Vancouver area. I understand that some people in the interior say, "Oh yeah, we've seen this before," but here on West Coast in the Vancouver region, you never seen this before. This is just crazy, crazy cold weather. Now, I don't know if you guys can see it on the camera, but outside my kitchen window, it's like winter wonderland out there. There's snow and ice and a lot of it. Cold weather like this, when there's a lot of time spent inside, generally very good for some reflection and soul search. However, today's topic was not driven by one of these uh, mindful, deep contemplation of past, present, and future. This was triggered actually quite interestingly by an email, a very unexpected but definitely welcome email that I received just yesterday. It's a very simple email and it's just as poorly written as any of those very obvious spam mails you get once in a while with uh, really poorly strung together English words and phrases that you take one look and you know this is not someone whose English would be their first language. This is someone to whom English is quite possibly not even their second language, maybe third or fourth language. Uh, it was an email like that, very simple, very short, very poorly written. Uh, it said, Johnny, how doing you? You good, I hope. COVID-19, safe you must stay. Just like Yoda in Star Wars, safe you must stay. From Uncle, who misses you a lot. And what's interesting is this email came when I have just spent this past week with Uncle Suzuki on my mind. Yeah, my uncle is Japanese, and his name is Suzuki, Makoto Suzuki. We call him Suzuki-san. He is not an actual uncle by blood. He's he used to be my father's best friend. In fact, he was my father's first friend in Japan when my father lived in Japan for a period of time. Uh, so they became sworn brothers, and so I grew up calling him Uncle Suzuki, even though he's Japanese and we were Taiwanese. Uncle Suzuki had been on my mind a lot, honestly, because of COVID, because of watching my father getting old, dealing with dementia. I remember Uncle Suzuki because Uncle Suzuki is uh, close to my father's age, and I have not heard from Uncle Suzuki for the past 2, maybe 3 years. And that is a kind of a worrisome thing Because even though Uncle Suzuki is not an uncle by blood, even though I have not seen him since 1997, Uncle Suzuki has, even when I was a child, always be like clockwork. Every Christmas, every New Year, every Christmas, every New Year, we would receive a package for my parents and another package for me and my siblings with some random toys and games and puzzles and cool little things that he knew would interest us kids. Every year, I remember as far back as I was uh, 10 years old and all the way up to uh, maybe 3 years ago. Uh, I even even after I no longer lived at home, even after I became an adult and I moved out on my own and lived in various locations, his gifts would always find me. Sometimes chocolate, sometimes treats and snacks from Japan, and sometimes just a nice little card that Christmas card that play music uh, and of course email written really poorly in this puzzled together English vocabulary, wishing me the best. He was like clockwork for many years, and then 3 years uh, ago, suddenly communication just cuts out, and of course I wrote email, I inquired about him with my parents. And the only thing I could gather was he was very busy, and maybe he just forgot to write, and my emails went unanswered. Honestly, I started to think maybe I would never hear from my dear Uncle Suzuki again. And suddenly, this Christmas, his email came. No gift this time, but hey, I'm happy to just get an email from him. I have talked very extensively about the cool people, the good people in my life. So I think now it is time, with this email, with this very s- welcome surprise, this is time to uh, devote, to dedicate one episode to my Uncle Suzuki, who, wow, there's just so much to say about him that there's, there's no way I can talk about him in its entirety in just one episode, but I will share some of my fondest memory in a cohesive narration, uh, narrative that hopefully you guys can enjoy knowing Uncle Suzuki like I have. Um, like I said, Uncle Suzuki met my dad when my dad was in Japan, and uh, Uncle Suzuki is a very flighty, very free, very impulsive, and very gentle person. He is that guy. He is that uncle who walk around dressed in clothes that look like they're going to fall apart, and clothes that are at least 40 years out of fashion, with a uh, patched, torn and patched backpack on his back, and his hair always kind of a mess, and uh, but he walked forward to greet the world and have a lot of enjoyment and confidence in what he does. Like everything is a new adventure, and he welcome every new adventure, no matter how they would turn out. Um, to my father, who have spoken very harshly, very judgmentally about my uncle Suzuki behind his back. My father referred to him as a hobo, as a bum, as someone who can't even afford his own ticket when he come visit us. My parents had to send him tickets so he could come stay with us. And while he stayed with us, he's eating our food, and using our electricity, and he never had money. Uh, and he is uh, that loser who would not uh, have any ambition to my father, uh, who I've had extensive conversation with regarding his friends and his youth and his ventures. My father told me that back when he was in Japan, him and his other friends, they were very ambitious. They were always trying, looking for new ways of making money. They were very daring and very gutsy. They were a bunch of hot-blooded, brave, uh, enterprising young people, which, if you understand my father, basically means they didn't mind doing illegal things. And he said, your uncle Suzuki was always a bum. He was a loser. He wouldn't uh, get off his butt uh, to work with us. He didn't want to do the kind of things we did. All he wanted to do was work on his stupid cartoon and play his stupid games. Now, some of you say, what was he an artist? No, my uncle Suzuki was not an artist, but he was uh, a guy. He was one of the lighting engineers in a cartoon studio, in animation studio. So when you see anime or cartoon, and they have people in there that work on the shadings and the lights and how to cast a shadow or how to. He was the guy who did all that. He was the guy who did all the lighting and shading and different layering of things. To my dad, that was not viewed as a real job. That was like a cartoon. That was uh, drawing comic books. That was stupid. That's my father. Has always been my father's opinion of Uncle Suzuki, even though they were supposedly best friends. Uncle Suzuki, on the other hand, didn't let this kind of criticism face him. He got these a lot. He didn't just get it from my father, he got it from his parent. He got this criticism from his own sibling. To almost everyone around him, he was the biggest loser in life. He was poor, he didn't care, and he was not ambitious. And some of them probably thought him a bit mentally challenged as well because he just didn't care. To us kids, though, he was that uncle. When I say that uncle, he was the uncle. He was the favorite uncle. He always knew where the good stores were. He always knew where the candies were. He always knew what store had the best chocolate, what store had the best toy, which toy store had which toy or game on special, on sale, on discount. He always knew what is the newest trending toys, newest trending games. I guess my uncle Suzuki always had a little bit of a Michael Jackson in him, in that he was extremely fond of children, but not in a weird way. He genuinely, honestly loved children, and because the reason why he was so fond of children is because even though he was our uncle, he was the same age as my father. He is a big child at heart. Uh, Uncle Suzuki loved puzzles, loved games, loved uh, messing around, wrestling, rolling around on the floor, and uh, he got a lot of enjoyment out of exploiting the more uh, childish side of him. And part of that was to entertain other children. I already mentioned that Uncle Suzuki always walked around with an old patched up backpack on his back. That backpack always held puzzles, card games, and his magic kit. Uh, I can't even begin to tell you how many times that we would be having lunch or we would be out doing something, and next thing we turn around and Uncle Suzuki is missing. and then we find him 2 hours later in a nearby park, performing magic with a group of children around him. Uh, Actually, one of my more vivid memory this was when I was about 16, 15 to 16 years old. Uncle Suzuki came to Canada to visit us, and him and me and my siblings decided to go to McDonald's for lunch. Uncle Suzuki finished his food a lot faster than the rest of us, so he said, "Hey, I'll be outside. I want to go have a smoke." Oh, we didn't think much of it, so we took our time finishing our hamburger and the fries, and then when we finally came outside, there was Uncle Suzuki in front of McDonald's, uh, working his magic kit, working his magic like he's the greatest magician in the world. Children all around him, children that were coming to McDonald's, children that were just leaving McDonald's, they were all around him, and there were parents that were tossing uh, $1, $2 coins at his feet. And he had this big, joyful smile. And when he saw us, he said, "Look, look." Now, let me quickly pause a second here and explain. One of the biggest issue with us and Uncle Suzuki was he spoke Japanese and very, very, very little English, very little Chinese. Me and my sibling did not speak Japanese. So my dad, who spoke perfect Japanese, could communicate fine with Uncle Suzuki. The rest of us, when we tried to communicate with Uncle Suzuki, it was a lot of gesturing, pantomiming, uh, trying to find different way to convey to him what we needed him to do, and him trying to convey to us what he wanted to do, what he didn't want to do. A lot of grabbing him by the arm, pushing him this way, leading him that way, and he pulling away and going his own way. It was a lot of frustration. Like honestly, um, when we were children, before we became teenagers, he was the favorite uncle because he knew all the cool toys and cool games. When we became teenagers, honestly, we saw him as a we still loved him a lot, of course, but we saw him as a little bit of a pest because a lot of time it's like we were trying to do cool teenager things, important teenager things, and it ended up like we were trying to babysit him. He was well, to put it bluntly, we kind of thought of him as that crazy, retarded uncle, uh, which was really unkind. But I'm saying this so you guys understand that when I try to convey how my uncle talked to us, it sounds like I'm doing a bad job of imitating someone who had bad English. That may be insulting to some people, but I want to tell you this is nowhere as bad as things were. Okay, like when I try to say, so when I try to imitate my uncle, this is me still trying to make it so you guys can make sense of what I'm saying. If it's if I want to do it how it really sounded, it wouldn't make any sense on the video. It was that frustrating. Okay, so go back to the outside McDonald's. We came out of McDonald's and there he was with his magic kit, people throwing money at his feet, and he got this big smile when he saw us, and he said, "Look, me famous. They like me magic, me big magician, me very good. They give me money, me professional." And we were so embarrassed. We grabbed him and didn't even give him a chance to put his magic kit back in his backpack. We just grabbed him, uh, me and Peter, my younger brother Peter, me and Peter on one side, my brother David on the other side. We just basically manhandled him out of there. We said, "Uncle, uncle, let's go." They are not doing it because they like your magic. They think you're a homeless beggar. There were so many memories like that. That's good old crazy Uncle Suzuki that brought so much joy into our life. Um, he was the first person who put a katana, a samurai sword, in my hand. This I remember very clearly. I was 6 years old. My dad had this pair of beautiful, genuine, antique katana. Well, it's a katana and wakizashi set, as a long and short sword set on the mantle. And when I was little, I always wait until no one's at home, and I like to get a chair and climb up and feel the sword. I dream about one day they would be mine. One day I would be like a swordsman, like a blind swordsman. Well, that day my uncle was staying home, babysitting me. He was visiting us. He came to Taiwan from Japan. I was still in Taiwan then. So everyone left home, and I was kind of bored and cranky. And my uncle Suzuki took the sword off the mantle, and he said, uh, "Sword, you warrior, me big warrior, you little warrior, me show you how you sword." And so he showed me how to hold a katana properly. And of course, back then the katana was way too heavy for me, so I was holding it above my head and wobbling all over the place. So he put his hand over mine to steady me, and then he said, "Big warrior, small warrior, we swing together." And then he brought my arm down and his arm down, and that sword smashed through one of the beautiful crystal cabinets in the living room, made a royal mess. And I remembered my uncle Suzuki was, "Oh no, what? Oh no, 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 oh no, your father killed me. Your father, no, no, tell your father what we did. No, tell your father." And I was thinking, even at that young, I was thinking, well, we got to tell him something. Like he's going to come home and he's going to be really pissed. What are we going to tell him? I was all worried about it because I was thinking, well, if my uncle didn't want to fess up, if he was, I might get blamed for it. Uh, and then when my dad came home, he was really, really furious and asked what happened. And my uncle, to my surprise, did a very adult thing. My uncle, who was really scared of getting into trouble, he stood up and he said, me fell down, hit cabinet with head. Cabinet broke. And uh, I think obviously because there's no blood anywhere, so my father didn't believe him. But that's the story he was sticking with, and because he was our house guest, my father didn't press the matter either. So I was very thankful that he took the blame for that one. Uncle Suzuki was very, very impulsive, like I already mentioned, very flighty. Um, And that, paired with the fact that back then there's no cell phone, uh, no easy way to communicate, means we spend a majority of our time looking for him. Sometimes he saw something he liked, something caught his attention. He would wander away in the middle of lunch. We would be sitting at a restaurant, and then he say he go to washroom or he go see something, and then we wouldn't be able to find him, and we don't hear from him for the next 4 hours, and then we have to start combing the neighborhood looking for him. Usually, we start looking at the park, schoolyard, where there's children. Usually, that's where how we find him. So that was very frustrating. He was also that uncle. Yeah, that uncle. Every family have an uncle like that. That when you say, "Hey, Uncle Suzuki, don't open the closet door because it's broken." Okay, don't open it. And as soon as you turn your back, you will hear this loud crash, and then he's standing there holding the closet door. "Oh no, 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 no! Oh no! You broken? Why? Why broken?" Like as if you didn't just warn him like 2 minutes ago. Another fond memory I had of him was this one time when he wanted some live seafood. So me and Peter went with him to the waterfront, which was about a 30-minute car ride away from our house. We took the bus there, we got him his live seafood, and then we ended up waiting for a long time for the returning bus because the bus that we got was out of service, so we had to wait for another one. Out of nowhere, Uncle Suzuki just stood up and started walking, and we were like, Uncle Suzuki, where are you going? He said, me walk. Me tired waiting, no bus, no bus, never, never any bus. Me walk home. I said, Uncle Suzuki, it's way too far to walk home. He said, me walk, me shortcut this way. Come, you, no come, you go on bus. Me walk. Well, like I said, there was no cell phone. Uncle Suzuki didn't know enough English to ask for direction or read the signs, so we couldn't just leave him. So me and Peter ended up walking with him. Took us almost 6 hours to get home. Oh, that was so exhausting. The last time I saw Uncle Suzuki was 1997, right before things all fell apart at home and I ended up in a foster home. I remember this uh, farewell because originally when he came to visit my family in Canada, my parents bought him a ticket and with a return ticket 6 months later. He was supposed to stay for 6 months. About 3 months into his stay, one day we came home from school, and Uncle Suzuki was packing his suitcase, and he said, "Me leave tomorrow." And we said, "No, no, Uncle, you no leave tomorrow. You leave 3 more months. Tomorrow we go have lunch because we had a lunch plan next day." He said, "No, no, me leave tomorrow, tonight. Goodbye. Goodbye, Johnny. Goodbye, Peter. Goodbye, David. Tomorrow, Uncle leave." And then he showed us that he actually went and bought his own return ticket without the knowledge of my parents. We were shocked. Well, I mean, first, my parents always said he didn't have money to buy his own ticket. Obviously, he did. Uh, we were shocked that he did something like that just so sudden. I remember asking Uncle why, and Uncle Suzuki said, "Me no stay. Your papa, uh, bad person. Me no stay." I never did figure out exactly what transpired between them. I can only surmise that my uncle found out about some illegal dealings my father had at the time, or some shady plan my father had at the time, and objected to it, and they had an argument, and things were said that really hurt my uncle's feeling. I think what struck me so much, that impressed me so much, left such a deep impression about what my uncle said, "Me no stay, your papa bad person," was that all these years we only heard my father criticizing him as being a bum, a hobo, a loser. And yet here he is, this loser in my father's mind, very righteously declare that he does not want to stay because my father was a bad person. There's a sad but beautiful symmetry in all of that. There's two more pieces of memory, perhaps the memory I cherish the most, about my Uncle Suzuki that I want to share before I bid you good night. Um, when I was 11 or 12 years old, whenever my uncle came to visit, I would feel, I would almost convince myself that he didn't really want to visit me, that he wanted to play games with my brothers because they were sighted. They would go out, they could go out and play airsoft. They could play with BB guns. They could play with archery. They could play with paper airplane. They could play with painting and drawing. They could play card games. That he loved them more than he loved me. I was just a blind child who couldn't join in their game. But every time he was able to set my mind at ease and make me feel that he liked me just as much, if not more, than the rest of them, by finding ways to include me in whatever games they were playing. Even when they were playing card games, poker or uh, Uno or whatever. Back then, there's no such thing as accessible Braille cards. I didn't have any of those. So obviously, I couldn't read the card. I didn't know what was going on. Uncle Suzuki would always insist that he wanted me to be on his team. And even more cool, he would never say that he's helping me out because I was blind. He would never say that I needed a partner because I was blind. He would tell everybody that he was stupid, I was smart. He needed my brain. Uh, and he did that for a lot of other games. I'm eternally so grateful for that kindness, that gesture that he extended to me back then. The second memory I want to share was I was 10 years old. I remember, well, I've spoken many times during Soul Search Sunday about the uh, hellish, abusive situation I was going through uh, when I was 9 and 10 at the hands of my stepmother. This year, this time was no different. I was 10 years old. I was still living with my stepmother, Maria, and her children. Last summer, my uncle came to Canada to stay with us to visit. And one day, uh, when him and I were on our own, I broke down. And well, I thought he couldn't possibly understand me because we had such a hard time communicating. Even though I believed that he probably couldn't understand what I was saying, I confided in him how much abuse I was going through, how much I hated this world, how much I hated being weak and blind. To my surprise, my uncle turned to me, put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, "You, small warrior, me, big warrior. Small warrior, be big warrior one day, and no one defeat big warrior." I'm happy to report that whatever prophecy that was, I think he did pretty good on predicting the future. Because now, me, big warrior, I wish that someday soon I can see my Uncle Suzuki face to face and show him that now, big warrior can take care of old warrior.